This is the Pin Power Podcast with your host, Kara Chase. Every week, Kara teaches you about Pinterest marketing, online entrepreneurship, and productivity. How-tos and insider tips to build a strong foundation for marketing your business. You can read more about each episode over on the blog at karachase.com. Now, let's dive in.
Hey, thanks so much for listening in today. If you haven't already, click subscribe to listen to the Pin Power Podcast wherever you tune into your favorite podcasts. If you want to get started learning to use Pinterest for your business, go to karachase.com/learn and get started for free. Today, we are going to talk about 7 steps to consistency, building an online business. This week, I am sharing something much more personal than I normally do. Having been in law enforcement, hyper aware of the dangers of the internet, and a mom of 2 littles, I keep my personal life pretty private on my official business social media accounts. When I decided to start my own business after a few years in social media management, I was basically starting from scratch. I had managed millions of fans and more social media accounts than I can remember. But it was always for a brand or other small business, never for myself. I had to build my online presence and expertise as quickly as I could, both through blogging and a social media marketing strategy. It wasn't easy or comfortable. What I want to talk with you about is the importance of consistency and how you end up ahead of the game in the long run. I'm going to do that by describing one of my most important self-care routines and how I realized it's so similar for building an online business. Stick with me, and I promise you'll see how you can use these lessons to help your own entrepreneurship mindset. This is my self-care or die moment. When I was in law enforcement in San Diego, I had a crazy and totally unpredictable schedule. I was on a rotating shift that changed every week or so, and I had almost zero control over planning a structured, healthy life. I was often working more than 10 to 15 hours at a time, dealing with society's unsavory individuals, and there were a few times I was literally in my car for 2 to 3 days straight. The only thing I knew I could pretty much count on was Saturdays off. There were far more things that I disliked than liked about my career, which ultimately led to my decision to get out while I could. More than anything, though, it was how what I did day in and day out was changing my perspective on people and life in general. I don't need anyone to tell me that people lie, cheat, and steal. I have seen and handled the worst of the worst in ways which most people cannot fathom. But what I started noticing was I was tired, bitchy, skeptical, and withdrawn pretty much all the time. After a couple years of not feeling right physically and trying to work with my doctor to figure out what was wrong, she at one point looked me in the eye and said, and I quote, "Your job is killing you." Well, shit. While I couldn't see what was next for me, I knew I needed to do something for myself to ground and center my emotions and mindset. I knew I loved to walk on the beach to look for treasures like shells and pretty rocks. And I made the commitment to do a walking meditation every Saturday morning on the beach. I would usually get up around 7 a.m., fill up the largest travel mug I had with coffee, and head to my favorite spot, the Dog Beach in Ocean Beach, San Diego. I would take off my sandals and walk as quickly as I could, without running like a maniac, to stick my feet in the water. I usually stood there for about 10 minutes just taking it all in with my 5 or 6 senses. Once I felt calm and collected, I would walk along the beach until my giant cup of caffeine was empty. I would meander, I would mosey, I would stop and pet dogs and look for treasures. I did this for 3 years. And I can count the number of times on one hand that I missed my weekly ritual. There were some mornings I would get to the beach and the sand was literally covered with a blanket of shells. I would go home with my pockets overflowing with treasures like an excited child. There were some mornings I would arrive and there was simply seaweed and that stinky ocean smell. This particular beach was also the spot where the San Diego River met the Pacific Ocean. The meeting of these two bodies of water meant that the shoreline was constantly changing. I never knew when I arrived what kind of beach walk morning it would be or what the shoreline would look like. But whatever it was exactly what I needed at that particular moment. I noticed after year one that there were seasonal patterns I found interesting. I can tell you that during the winter, you're going to find more sand dollars on that beach, and during the summer, you'll find more mussel shells. The monthly changes in high and low tide times made a huge difference as well. I can also say it took me a full year to not be disappointed when I would arrive at the beach and it would be a no shells morning. I realized at some point that those were the days I really needed to be taking it all in with no distractions. Those were the days I was feeling particularly down or upset. Those were the days I would stand still in the same spot with the ocean washing over my feet for an hour. I needed reflection, reevaluation, calmness. At the end of 3 years, when we moved to Portland and I left my career in law enforcement, I had hundreds and hundreds of shells and beach treasures, vases upon vases. What is the point of me letting you into this very personal story? The dynamic mirrors exactly what it's been like to start and run my own business. Thanks for sticking with me through that story, and I promised I'd bring it all around. And here are the 7 steps to consistency for business owners. Number 1, figure out what you need to do to make you happy and healthy. The only way you'll be able to stay consistent as you build your business is to do something that lights you up and helps you solve a problem for others that's important to you. Think about it. How often have you been able to be consistent with a diet change or a workout routine that you didn't love? I'm guessing 0 times. Number 2, form a game plan, even if it's a small habit, and commit to it. Small habits formed over time eventually lead to big changes. I had no idea what my next career would be or even how I would ever leave the career I was in, but I knew I had to take care of myself. The habit of my first self-care routine that was non-negotiable laid the groundwork for opening up my future and learning to pay attention to what I needed. Number 3, pay attention to what is presented to you. Just like I had no idea what the beach would look like on any given Saturday morning, sometimes you have no idea what form your business or clients or offerings are going to take. Somehow, there was always a message in what I was presented with, even if I didn't think it was what I needed at the time. In retrospect, it always proved otherwise. Number 4, treasures are awesome. In business, those treasures are income, clients, new contracts, collaborations, PR opportunities, all the things that grow your business. Some days you will find a lot, some days you don't, and that's just how it goes. Treasure days are the days you feel invincible and like you have this whole entrepreneur thing figured out. Enjoy them. Bask in them. You have earned it. Number 5, those no treasure days are a gift. You won't always land the deal or get the speaking gig or have a huge launch. Those are the stinky seaweed days, and they are the gift of pausing. Those are the best days to take more time for yourself and reflect on changes, processes, and your emotions around your business. Number 6, tides and shorelines change. If you had told me I'd go from being a senior special agent to the social media manager of Megadeth to running a successful Pinterest marketing agency and Pinterest membership, I would have laughed pretty hard and probably rolled my eyes. The point is, business plans change. Don't let how you think it's supposed to be or how it's supposed to happen keep you from seeing what's right in front of you. Go with the flow and don't let change intimidate you. Number 7, over time, you'll end up with tons of treasures. Entrepreneurship is a long game. Those of us that have been in business for a few years know that the get-rich-quickers don't last long. And knowing how to take the good with the lessons of the bad is the key to that longevity. Over time, with consistency and an authentic headspace, you will end up with tons and tons of treasures, just like I ended up with vases full of shells and sand dollars. So what are my best consistency habits? My keys to consistency now have to do with a more developed self-care routine and creating systems in my business. Because we no longer live close to the beach, I found a lovely spot right on a river in our own neighborhood. It's covered so I can go rain or shine, which is much more of an issue in the Pacific Northwest than San Diego. Instead of looking for seashells, I watch how the wildlife, trees, and river change throughout the year. I have seen ducks, geese, and their babies, bald eagles, great blue herons, foxes, deer, coyotes, beavers, even a river otter. It's my space to have my coffee and trust that everything is all good. I also make time every day to meditate and journal, which I've found to reveal so much about my true motivations and purpose, both in life and business. Since I use Pinterest for most of my content marketing, I've also developed an organized system for batching my content monthly that keeps me from feeling behind or just barely keeping up. I use this system for myself and all my clients, as well as teaching it to other online entrepreneurs inside Pin Power Method. You can start learning the basics of creating your own consistent batching system with a free video training I put together with Tailwind. Thank you so much for listening. I know this was a long one. It was pretty personal and it went kind of deep. I'm glad you stuck with me if you're still listening, because there's nothing better than seeing how consistency and mindset pay off over time. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next time.
Want to know more about Pinterest marketing for your online business? Head over to pinpowermethod.com, the first Pinterest marketing membership designed for entrepreneurs. We'll catch you next time, Rockstar.